All right, y'all. First and foremost, give all praises to you. How about Shem Yahweh Baraka Thumb? Give us a sincere greeting to all the brothers and sisters scattered across the four corners, teaching this word with sincerity and with charity. Man, these days flying by. And time just flying in general, man. I looked up and I put the last little slide in, and I looked up and it was 1 second left on the broadcast before this thing start. Man, but all praises though, we got this thing done. I think we got enough info for the hour and a half. But we're doing a lot of reading, y'all. This is gonna be a history lesson today. This is a little history lesson, and which really just scanning through about 200 years. All right, we're gonna scan through about 150 BC to about 50 AD. All right. And because I was listening to the lesson, the conference lesson yesterday, and I was saying, like, how much do we really know? How much do we really know about 70 AD? What happened? Um, what happened? Who started it? How did it start? How much do we really know? Or do we just know 70 AD? Shalom, brother Yashar Yahuda. How much do we know about 70 AD? And we gonna get into the Babylon of Timbuktu. We gonna inference that, because that's probably about, in my 10 plus years in this thing, that's about as much as I done got from, especially from my time in, and I haven't taught it because I didn't know it. I didn't really research into it. Um, but I was thinking about it yesterday. I'm like, man, we need to really know exactly what was going on again, and some of this information I done already went through and went over. But again, we just scanning through, y'all, to make everything connect. Because there are a lot of holes, man. We have to connect. We have to connect we have to connect that after that rededication of the temple, took to the time of Christ, to the time of the destruction of the temple, to the time of us fleeing, and going into Africa. And then you have just a gap from, that we trying to fill from 70 AD all the way to the 1400s, when we going into the 14 1600s, when we going into these captivities. We have a big gap there. We have a big gap. We got a huge gap there. And today we're not getting into that. Today we just going from that rededication of the temple to 70 AD pretty much. And then maybe, maybe if y'all want a part two, we'll do a part two later, or maybe do a part two next week. Um, all the way up to maybe, get into Bar Koba's revolt. I may do a small lesson on that, just on the Bar Koba revolt. That's it, about 130 something, 136, 137 AD, where we went back in and tried to reestablish ourselves against those Romans. But it should be informal, man. If y'all can, you don't fall asleep through this thing, or you don't, because it's gonna be a lot of reading, y'all. It's gonna be a lot of reading. It's gonna be information you probably ain't heard before. It's probably gonna be some information you might disagree with. So we definitely welcome Israel, all Israel, to research these things out. Let's not just settle on Babylon and Timbuktu, that one little paragraph, and then closing the book on 70 AD. Well, we fled into Africa. That's it. Well, what happened, brother? Like, how y'all even start fighting? How the Romans even start fighting with the Jews? Like, what is going on? Like, what led up to this moment? We don't get into those things, so we're gonna get into them a little bit today. Brother Dion, shalom, brother.
Shalom, Mark. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Like, I can't complain. How about yourself?
No complaints here.
I hear that. But let's go ahead and get into this thing, man. Siege of Jerusalem, 70 AD, Great Jewish Revolt. All right, a historical look into what happened. What happened? All right, Babylon and Timbuktu. You ain't got that book, do you, Op?
Nah.
That one came with the precept pack back in the day, man. Back in the heydays when you had to have this book. I don't know if you can read that. I can read it, but I don't think you can read that thing. You on your phone? Okay.
I got the TV on too.
Oh, okay. Can you see that?
Yeah.
You see that paragraph? We gonna read that paragraph, and then we gonna read the next page if you can see it. If not, I'll pull the book out because I can barely see it on this computer.
You talking about
But
in the year 65 BC?
yes, sir, Con.
Okay.
So you can
Uh,
start there, and read that on down.
okay. It says in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem in 70 AD. General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has
Wait,
been
well,
estimated
let's slow down when we read. Let's slow down here. It said, what is it? During the period of the military, what's that? Government? What is it?
during the period of the military government of Palestine,
Many,
many outrages
huh.
and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people.
Con against the residue. All right, those that were left. It still was the outages and the atrocities done to these people. Go ahead.
During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa,
Mm-hmm.
fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery.
Mm-hmm.
The slave market was full of black Jewish slaves.
All right, the slave market was full of black Jewish slaves, and when we go there, when we read that other sentence, that 1,000 Jews fled into Africa, we immediately say, "See, we went into West Africa." But if we really honest with ourselves, does it say we went into West Africa? It just says we went into Africa. Now, if we continue reading, we may see what he's talking about. Let's keep on reading. Shalom, Sister Celicia. Let's keep reading here.
And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. This prophecy and all the residue of the prophecies contained in Deuteronomy 28:15 through 68 befell the black Jews after they disobeyed the laws of God.
These things came on the black Jews. Come on.
Many nations transported the Jews into slavery, and the sons of Israel transmigrated to every continent.
Mm.
The
Come
Jewish
on.
the Jewish philosopher Philo, about 40 BC to 40 AD, who lived in Alexandria, Egypt, said that 1 million Jews resided in Libya and Egypt from the Catabathmos to the borders of Ethiopia.
All right, so we got a Jewish philosopher in 40 lived up to 40 AD said that there was probably 1 million Jews that resided in Libya, Egypt, Catabathmos, borders of Ethiopia. There was many black Jews here that were transmigrated into slavery and transmigrated into every continent. Go ahead.
Professor
Now,
A.
at this point, are we talking about the transatlantic slave trade?
No,
We're not talking about the transatlantic slave trade. All
no.
right, we talking about a slave trade that's happening, after 70 AD. Just briefly after 70 AD. And then we see in 40 AD that there's Jews already pretty much, in some of these other areas, millions of Jews. I said a million Jews. Let me stop. Let me not see. I almost went back. It was estimated about a billion Jews were residing in Libya, Egypt, and Calabathmos, and etc. Go ahead.
Professor A.H. Godby says that Philo leaves us doubtful about which boundaries of Ethiopia he meant. I think that Philo meant the western and southern boundaries of Ethiopia because the prophet Zephaniah mentioned from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, the daughters of my dispersed. There was a period of over 600 years between Zephaniah and Philo, and considering the new waves of immigrants coming into Africa, they had 600 years to penetrate toward all the borders of Ethiopia. E. Shure wrote that Hebrewism was detectable by its inscriptions from the Egyptian border westward across North Africa to Mauritania. A.H. Godby says Jerome 340 to 420 AD, one of the four doctors of the church, wrote that the Jews were spread from the western extremity of Mauritania to India.
Now he talking about
Now,
the Jews on went to India. Go ahead.
now ancient Mauritania included part of the territory on the Atlantic Ocean, Morocco, and part of modern Algeria. It is certain that the Jews had migrated all across North Africa by the 2nd century. Some scholars fix the date earlier than this. The Greek historian and geographer Strabo, 63 BC to 24 AD, said concerning the Jews of Cyrene, Libya, now these Jews already have gotten into all cities, and it is hard to find a place in the habitable earth that has not admitted this tribe of men and is not possessed by it. And it has come to pass that Egypt and Cyrene, as having the same governors, and a great many other nations imitate their way of living.
They say these folks all over the place. It's hard to find a place where these folks ain't at. And you have people that are imitating, many great nations imitating their way of living. Go ahead.
Maintain great bodies of these Jews in a peculiar manner, privileged status, and grow up to greater prosperity with them and make use of the same laws with that nation also.
And then they getting prosperity from these folks. This is what the book is saying, y'all. Now that's what I'm saying. We stop at that little paragraph highlighted, but and then we say they went into West Africa, but the book ain't the book saying that it's talking about North Africa. All right, the book is talking about the folks all over the place. The book is talking about these folks in prosperity. These folks are doing well, and then folks are imitating these folks, these black Jews. Go ahead.
After the fall of the Carthaginian metropolis in North Africa, Roman power became dominant in the Barbary states. Under Roman suzerainty and power, the Jews of Asia and North Africa rebelled AD 115. The Jews considered themselves numerous enough to challenge Roman authority in the east and south because
So
of
we
their
didn't.
numbers. Shalaki.
That's it. That's it. And so again, we still see them around that Roman area where they done built themselves back up and they feel like they can challenge Rome. And we'll again, I said I may do like a short video on the Bar Kokhba revolt. But us going into that thing, man, we just gotta do the work, man. We gotta do the work. Um in this thing and fill those holes. Now he has a lot of information here, but we can't take what we want and then throw the other information away if we're saying that our brother Rudolph Windsor is a credible source. All right, and this we talking about on the next page, and I'm telling you that I got that thing highlighted, but I didn't read them other pages. I
Mm.
bought that book. I highlighted that thing. I got a couple other things highlighted. A couple pages over. I think on 80, 81, you see Islam being influenced by these folks. They a lot of the well, I think it's Elijah. I think it's Elijah Muhammad that's going around seeking where the Jews are because they're migrants. Um, they're migrants and they selling stuff. You know what I'm saying? They out here hustling. And so he's picking up on things that they doing, and like this book was just saying, a lot of these folks wanted to keep these same laws. They wanted to do the same kind of way of living that they seen them doing, being that they were prosperous, and we know, like book tell us also that um Islam kind of took a lot. Well, we know that from the Quran. It kind of took a lot from. Some even say plagiarized, but it kind of took a lot from the text, from our text. Brother Yashar says 408 BC. I don't know if that was something we was dealing with later. Dealing with earlier, rather. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that out because that is our main source there for what happened after 70 AD. We just say Africa, but man, Africa is a major continent, and then but we do also say West Africa, um, because of those slave markets. But those Romans, those Romans had slave markets, also a major slave market. We did a video on that a few weeks ago. The Hasmonean dynasty. Can you see that out?
Um, Hold on. My TV is a little behind the video on my phone, but yeah, I see it.
Okay, all praise.
The Hasmonean dynasty was a ruling dynasty of Judea and surrounding regions during classical antiquity, from c. 140 BCE to 37 BCE. Between c. 140 and 116 BCE, the dynasty ruled Judea autonomously in the Seleucid Empire, and from roughly 110 BCE, with the empire disintegrating, Judea gathered further autonomy and explained into the neighboring regions of Perea, Samaria, Idumea, Galilee, and Iturea. Some modern scholars regard the Hasmonean realm as an independent Israel. The Hasmonean rulers took the Greek title Basileus, king or emperor. Forces of the Roman Republic conquered the Hasmonean kingdom in 63 BCE and made it into a client state. Herod the Great displaced the last reigning Hasmonean client or ruler in 37 BCE.
All right, so he kind of turned them into a client state or vassal state. We'll look into that. Um, they had a certain amount of independence, but they weren't, just fully independent. There was treaties made. We're gonna look into that. And we see they expanded, you know what I'm saying, during the Seleucid Empire, with them semi autonomously ruling with them. They expanded into neighboring regions: Perea, Samaria, Idumea, Galilee, and Iturea. All right, they conquered these areas. Some modern scholars regard Hasmonean realm as an independent Israel. But we trying to beat that thing down. Israel becomes a vassal state. We've gone over the Hasmonean dynasty a lot. Go ahead.
Hold on. Okay, vassal state, a state with varying degrees of independence in its internal affairs, but dominated by another state in its foreign affairs, and potentially wholly subject to the dominating state.
Con, and some probably, and some potentially wholly, fully subject to the dominant state. But a vassal state, it has varying degrees of independence, all right, in its internal affairs, but dominated by another state in the foreign affairs. So internally, Israel had a certain amount of independence. You know, they could do a certain amount of judgment. That's why we see Paul saying, "Hey, man, I'm a Roman citizen. You can't really do me like this." Da 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 da. So they had to give him over to Rome for him to be judged. But internal affairs, some of them things against, it's Jew and Jew. They can handle that and get you stoned and killed, and like they did Stephen, without these issues. But we're going to see throughout this text, throughout this lesson, that Israel had a lot of internal affairs. Israel had a lot of when I say eternal affairs, I mean like civil wars. Man, we disputing and killing each other left and right. So we're gonna get into some of that. Also, they cause some of these disputes, and ultimately cause Rome to step in and try to get us under control. This is just a map here of those surrounding areas. At the top, you see some of the areas that they conquered, but you see Samaria, Idumea, Etruria is up high. Galilee is on the left there, top left. And that's why I say just kind of always have this map in your head. The Phoenician woman, see how that's even past Galilee. You see Tyrese Zidon up there highlighted also. I don't know if y'all can see my mouse, but Iturea on that left, on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. You got to have these things in your mind when you're reading the text and understanding who these neighboring folks are. The Ammonites, the Moabites. Why don't we hear about them in the New Testament? That's just something for y'all to look into. I don't know the answer. I just threw that out there. I'm gonna have to look into that myself. Why don't we see these neighboring cities here? And even the Edomites. But we know that they were conquered. Samaria was conquered. But we hear Samaria. We hear the Galileans. They were conquered. And Etruria was also conquered during a certain time. We're gonna get into a little bit of that history. Let's talk about Samaria. I had a brother ask me earlier today, man, of still dealing with that Northern Kingdom. We just gonna scan through this thing. Can you see that out?
Con. It says Sumerian history, Holman Bible Dictionary. It says
you can start at that bottom area, or that place name of a mountain. Place name of
mountain, city, and region, meaning mountain of watching, and the residents thereof. 42 miles north of Jerusalem and 9 miles northwest of Nablus. A hill protrudes from the broad valley which cuts across the central highlands of Israel. There lie ruins of ancient Samaria near a small village called Sebastia. Samaria was the capital, residence, and burial place of the kings of Israel. Following the northern kingdom's fall to Assyria, 721 BC, exiles from many nations settled Samaria. Later, the Greeks conquered the regions, 331 BC, and Hellenized the area with Greek inhabitants and culture.
So listen to that now. They were conquered by Assyria 721 BC. And then, the Syrians brought in other heathens in there, and they mixed in with the remnant of Israel that was left, the northern kingdom that was left in Samaria. And then while that mixing is going on, 400 years later, we see the Greeks coming in, and then they conquering them and Hellenizing them, the area with Greek inhabitants and culture. All right, go ahead.
Then the Hasmoneans under John Hyrcanus destroyed the city in 119 BC. After a long period without inhabitants, Samaria lived again under Pompey and the Romans, 63 BC.
Now, John Hyrcanus, and we're going to get into him a little bit, and his brother, John Hyrcanus, destroyed the city in 119 BC. All right, he destroyed the city, and then it was, this is why I was saying that, he went in there, destroyed the temple also. They didn't get to rebuild that temple that they used to worship on Garrison. Go ahead, though, Shalakia.
Finally, Herod the Great obtained control of Samaria in 30 BC and made it one of the chief cities of his territory. Again, the city was resettled with people from distant places. This time, mercenaries from Europe. Herod renamed the city Sebasti, using the Greek word for Augustus, the emperor. And when the Jews revolted in 66 AD, the Romans reconquered the city and destroyed it. The Romans later rebuilt Samaria, but the city never regained the prestige it once had.
So even 66 AD, um, they once we revolted again, we gonna get into that. The Romans reconquered that city and destroyed it. Herod the Great had that thing, and he repopulated that city, and then he named it, and he pretty much named it after the emperor. Because he had allegiance to the emperor. We gonna see why. We read a little bit on it where we seen Herod be that being reestablished, being established after the Hasmonean dynasty, and then we get into the Herodian dynasty with Herod the Great, and he gains control of Samaria in 30 BC and repopulates the area. But they're saying he populating the area with mercenaries from Europe and what else? And people from distant places. All right, go ahead.
Samaria is the only major city founded by Israel, the northern kingdom. Omri, the sixth king of Israel, 885 to 874 BC, purchased the hill of Samaria for his royal residence. Shechem had been the capital of the northern kingdom until Jeroboam relocated it at Tirzah. While the term Samaria was first identified with the city founded by Omri, it soon became associated with the entire region surrounding the city. The tribal territory of Manasseh and Ephraim. Finally, the name Samaria became synonymous with the entire northern kingdom. 1 Kings 13 and 32, Jeremiah 31:5. After the Assyrian conquest, Samaria began to shrink in size. By New Testament times, it became identified with the central region of Palestine, with Galilee to the north and Judea to the south. The name Samaritans originally was identified with the Israelites of the northern kingdom. When the Assyrians conquered Israel and exiled 27,290 Israelites, a remnant of Israel remained in the land. Assyrian captives from distant places also settled there. This led to the intermarriage of some, though not all, Jews with Gentiles, and to widespread worship of foreign gods.
All right, Jews with Gentiles intermarriage, though not all. All right, 28,000, 27,000 took out, though not all. Some it was a remnant that remained in the land. We see that with Hezekiah, pleading with them to come and let's do Passover properly. But we do see intermarriage, would happen if they put those heathens in the land. And we see that in Ezra. Go ahead.
By the time the Jews returned to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple and the walls of Jerusalem, Ezra and Nehemiah refused to let the Samaritans share in the experience. The old antagonism between Israel to the north and Judah to the south intensified the quarrel. The Jewish inhabitants of Samaria identified Mount Gerizim
Garrison, yeah,
as the
okay.
chosen place of God and the only center of worship, calling it the navel of the earth because of a tradition that Adam sacrificed there. Their scriptures were limited to the Pentateuch, The
Pentateuch.
first five books. What'd you say?
Pentateuch,
Yeah,
or
Pentateuch.
Pentateuch. You was there.
Yeah, the first five books of the Bible. Moses was regarded as the only prophet and intercessor in the final judgment. They
Whew.
also believed that 6,000 years after creation, a restorer would arise and would live on earth for 110 years. On the judgment day, the righteous would be resurrected in paradise and the wicked roasted in eternal fire.
All right, so they they ain't that far, but they off on a few things, man. But they only have the Pentateuch, and they see Moses as their only the only prophet or intercessor. And that can make sense, being that they were cut off first. Assyrian captivity comes first. Um and they start just doing their own thing. Um Go ahead, out Shalaki.
What's it? And the last, what? Yeah, in the days of Christ, the relationship between the Jews and the Samaritans was greatly strained. The animosity was so great that the Jews bypassed Samaria as they traveled between Galilee and Judea. They went an extra distance through the barren land of Perea on the eastern side of the Jordan to avoid going through Samaria. Yet Jesus rebuked his disciples for their hostility to the Samaritans, healed a Samaritan leper, honored a Samaritan for his neighborliness, praised a Samaritan for his gratitude, asked a drink of a Samaritan woman, and preached to the Samaritan. Jesus challenged his disciples to witness in Samaria. Philip, a deacon, opened a mission in Samaria.
Con. So there's a little Samaritan history there. Is this what we want to be? I think this is what we want to be. Slide 10. Emperor Caligula. Emperor Caligula. Alright. Caligula. You want me to read? I can read. You just said they read 2, 3 passages like that. I read this one. Caligula needed to quell several riots and conspiracies in the Eastern territories during his reign. Aiding him in his actions was his good friend Herod Agrippa. Okay, these are Herodians. I think, did I do a lesson on the Herodians? Just the Herodians. Who are the Herodians? But
Huh?
they are people. There's a set, just like there's a set of Pharisees, Sadducees. There's also a set of Herodians. You do a search in your blue letter for Herodians. You'll pull up a couple verses where the Pharisees are actually going to them to figure out, man, what we gonna do about this joker who's out here healing all of these folks, and they call him the Messiah. Um, we'll see them even. It's like seemed like the Herodians had a little more, but they were loyal to Herod. All right, the Herodians were pretty much a people that were loyal to Herod, and Herod being placed in there kind of by Roman rule. Herod had his alliance with Rome. You know what I'm saying? He's the king of the Jews, but his real alliance is to Rome for the most part, and this is why he built them cities. Though he rebuilt it, though his father rebuilt the temple, made the temple look better, and he still built certain cities like Caesarea, where Cornelius was from. He built these cities for Rome, and the rebuilding of Samaria, which we just read. He still, he did that and named that city after Augustus the emperor. He did these things to appease Rome. And so Herods and the Herodian Empire and dynasty, they were more towards Rome. In the Hasmonean dynasty was more towards leaning towards getting us back to Torah and coming back to these law, statutes, and commandments, pretty much. So you can see like the Hasmonean dynasty being Pharisees, in the Herodian dynasty being more like Sadducees. They wanted more allegiance. They wanted more Hellenization. Um,
Hey, Shalakia.
Go ahead, Al.
And it's kind of almost feel like what kind of goes on today in Israel, like these different sets, and and everybody having got one core belief, but everybody have different way of putting things together as far as doctrinally, right? And it seemed like that's what was going on then, even though it was politics, but a lot of that stuff was the way they had, for me, how they perceive things need to be done for the culture. How you?
Con, that's a great point. And like I say, the Pharisees get a bad rap because of when Christ came on the scene, how they were treating Christ. But before then, they were the ones trying to get us back to Torah, man. They were the ones, man. They suffered a lot of persecution. If you going through that Hasmonean dynasty, I think we might have missed something, but we'll come back. I think we might got these slides out of order a little bit, but I had to go back and look at it. Um, Let me see. Yeah, I got something out of order. But where I was at, the cause it became aiding his actions was his good friend Herod Agrippa, who became governor of the territories of uh Bithynia and Trachonitis Trach Trachonitis. I don't know. You know, I brutalize these things. After
Trachonitis.
Trachonitis,
Con.
help me out. Caligula the water became emperor in 37 AD. The cause of tension in the East was complicated, involving the spread of Greek culture, Roman law, and the rights of Jews in the empire. All right, 37 AD, we see Caligula becoming emperor. And there's tension. All right, there's tension surrounding the spread of Greek culture, Roman law, and the rights of Jews in the empire. Caligula did not trust the prefect of Egypt, Aulus Avilius Flaccus. Flaccus had been loyal to Tiberius and conspired against Caligula's mother and had connections with the Egyptian separatists. In 38 AD, Caligula sent Agrippa, all right, Herod Agrippa, to Alexandria unannounced to check on Flaccus. According to Philo, the visit was met with jeers from Greek population who saw Agrippa as the king of the Jews. As a result, riots broke out in the city. Caligula responded by removing Flaccus from his position and executing him. In 39 AD, Agrippa accused his uncle Herod Antiphas, the tetrarch of Galilee and Perea, and we see Antiphas in the text, of planning a rebellion against Roman rule. With the help of Pathria, the Pathrians are they part of this revolt too. Just probably ain't, I ain't put it in here for time purposes. I didn't know how long we was gonna be going through this thing with this reading. But they had they was a problem also. We'll maybe get into that another time. Herod Antiphas confessed that Cagula confessed, and Caligula exiled him. Agrippa was rewarded with his territories. Riots again erupted in Alexandria in 40 AD between Jews and Greeks. All right, you seen riots. It's a part, I forget where that text is at though, but it's a precept in the text where you see who were the friends with Paul that they were also tent makers. Um, it was two Jews that were coming from Rome. They were tent makers, and they were teaching. And Paul came up on them and was like, hold on. He came up on them, and they had been because of the exiling of the It's himself to preaching. No, they were with him the whole time too. We may have to come back. Oh, Priscilla and Aquila. All right, there he met Acts 18:2. I'll read it real quick. And he found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, lately came from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart from Rome and came unto them. All right, and so we see there too that they're giving you that note there to show you that they coming from their region because all Jews have been expelled out of Rome, and this expulsion comes from us fighting each other, us in these synagogues going crazy with each other. These civil wars, and like, man, just get all y'all just get out of here. Y'all just get out of our region, man. Y'all take that stuff and y'all do it down there. But we of course we kept doing it in people's houses and so forth. But this is also kind of some of that same stuff that's going on here. Where I'm at, Agrippa was awarded. Riots again erupted in Alexandria between the Jews and the Greeks. Jews were accused of not honoring the emperor. Watch this now. Disputes occurred in the city of Jamnia. Jews were angered by the erection of a clay altar and destroyed it. In response, Caligula ordered the erection of a statue of himself in the Jewish temple of Jerusalem, a demand in conflict with Jewish monotheism. In this context, Philo wrote that Caligula regarded the Jews with the most especial suspicion, as if they were the only persons who cherished wishes opposed to his. The governor of Syria, Publius Petrononius, fearing civil war if the order were carried out, delayed implementing it for nearly a year. Agrippa finally convinced Caligula to reverse the order. All right, so you see Herod, you see King Agrippa, getting Caligula to, man, you don't really want to put that thing up. You don't want to put that in these temples. And you see this other governor of Syria saying, I don't want to put it in their synagogues because it's gonna cause an uproar. All right, we weren't playing that. They knew, man. We can't just do that to them. We can't just erect this thing. But Emperor Caligula, he wanted to be a deity. He was claiming himself to be a deity, and he wanted his little clay model put inside of the synagogues. But they feared the Jews, going to war if they did that. So Agrippa got him to convince him to reverse the order. However, Caligula issued a second order to have his statue erected in the temple of Jerusalem. In Rome, another statue of himself of colossal size was made of gilt brass for the purpose. However, according to Josephus, when the ship carrying the statue was still underway, news of Caligula's death reached Petrononius. Thus, the statue was never installed. But he was trying to do that, and it was causing riots throughout those areas amongst the Jews and the Greeks. Let me get out of this here. I need to go. Let me share my screen, y'all. I thought I could just it's that Siege of Jerusalem. I thought I could just put the tab in there, put the link in there, and I can hit the link, but I can't hit the link through StreamYard. Can y'all see my screen here?
It's coming up. Yeah.
All right, y'all. We got to read this. All right, we got to read it from the top to the bottom. It's gonna let us know what's happening in the Siege of Jerusalem. All right, this thing starting at 63 BC. I said we talk about 70 AD. We know things happen, but we don't really know what put all these things together.
It's a little grainy.
I can read it. I can read it. It says the Siege of Jerusalem, 63 BC. According during Pompey the Great's campaign in the east, shortly after the successful conclusion of the Third Mithridatic War, Pompey had been asked to intervene in a dispute over inheritance to the throne of the Hasmonean kingdom. All right, Pompey again had been asked to intervene in a dispute over the inheritance of the throne of the Hasmonean dynasty. Understanding, man, it's a lot of we got a lot of we did we read First Maccabees 8? I don't think we read. I think I might have missed it. I had it at the top, but I missed it, y'all. We'll go back and read it. Pompey had asked to intervene in a dispute over the inheritance to the throne of the Hasmonean dynasty. That First Maccabees chapter 8, you see a treaty being. That's why I had the vassal state up there. We seen a treaty being set between Israel and Rome. So Pompey's going down there. He's going to settle this dispute over that kingdom. Again, Hyrcanus II and Aristobulus, they were fighting each other. These brothers, and they had broke off into sex, and they up there killing each other, man, left and right, because they trying to fight over they mother. Their mother was Queen Alexandra Ptolemy. All right, so yeah, this is gonna get into it. Which turned into a war between Hyrcanus and Aristobulus II. The conquest of Jerusalem, however, spelled the end of Jewish independence and the incorporation of Judea as a client kingdom of the Roman Republic. See, because of our dispute, now you can see here we got our own money. But because of our dispute amongst this civil rivalry between us, man, the enemy was easily come in and conquer our butt and then put us and make us a client kingdom. The background, the death of Hasmonean queen, again, she's a queen, Alexandria Ptolemy, plunged Judea into a civil war between her two sons, Hyrcanus Aristobulus. After Aristobulus ousted his elder brother from both the throne and the high priesthood in Jerusalem, Antipater the Idumean advised Hyrcanus to enlist the aid of King Aretas III and Nabatea in return for the promise of territorial concessions. See, it's a jug. All right, and Antipater. Antipater.
I'm trying to figure out.
I'm trying to think that I heard the name before, but Antipater the Idumean. And the Idumean come in and advise Hyrcanus, okay, who is the elder brother. He's supposed to have the right to it. You know what I'm saying? But to aid him. To enlist the aid of King Aretas III and Nabatea in return of the promise of territorial accessions. Aretas provided Hyrcanus with 50,000 soldiers, and their joint forces besieged Aristobulus in Jerusalem. Pompey had. Go ahead, Shalaki.
Can you put your thing back over Antipater the Idumean? Antipater the Idumean is the third in the middle of the third line.
Antipater the Idumean. Yeah, I had it up there.
It says the founder of the Herodian dynasty.
Yeah.
And I thought that was mostly Jews doing that.
No, he was the founder of the Herodian.
My bad.
Not the Hasmonean. He's the Herodian. Okay. This is how we have Herod the Idumean in there. And this is why, when I was in that, when I was debating, we was dialoguing with Sakari, I was like, Herod kind of juked his way in. And he was like, nah, not really. He didn't really do it. But yeah, man, you got Antipater coming in here and ailing these people and say, hey, man, you can get these folks to help you and you can get your brother out. You can kill your brother, get him out of the way, but give me a little land, give me a little something. You know what I'm saying? But yeah,
Kind
this is how that thing jigging there. I heard somebody come in. Hold on, let me go back to stream. Y'all let brother in. Wait, nah, ain't nobody come in. Is that me? Oh, LA's. I came in through there. Oh, I'll remove that one then. All right, Shalakia, y'all. Okay. And their joint forces. Pompey had followed the successful conclusion. Pompey followed the successful conclusion of the Third Mithridatic War with the creation of the province of Syria, and had spent the years of 64 and 63 BC in bringing law and order to the region. Events in Judea prompted Aemilius Scaurus, Pompey's legate in Damascus, to arrive in Jerusalem. Sicarius was approached by both parties, but the issue was not settled by a bribe from Aristobulus. See, man, Israel crazy, man. So that the younger brother trying to bribe, Pompey's legate, Pompey and this Aemilius Scaurus. And Scaurus ordered Aretas to lift his siege of the city, as the Nabateans army withdrew towards Petra. Aristobulus set off in pursuit and defeated the Nabateans and Paparon. When Pompey himself arrived in Damascus in 63 BC, both Hyrcanus and Aristobulus visited him there. Pompey put off resolving the issue and informed the opposing parties he would resolve it once he had arrived in Judea in person. Aristobulus did not wait for Pompey. It's always be them younger ones, man. It's always be them, that young brother can't wait. Gotta take it in his own hands. We seen that too with David's son. We seen that too with the parable of the prodigal son. Aristobulus did not wait for Pompey's decision and left Damascus to shut himself away at his fortress in Alexandrium. That angered Pompey, who marched in Judea with his forces, at the sight of which Aristobulus yielded. When Aulus Gabinius led a force to take Jerusalem, however, Aristobulus' supporters refused to let Roman troops in. Incensed, Pompey had Aristobulus arrested and prepared to besiege the city. When Pompey arrived in Jerusalem, he surveyed the city, for he saw the walls were so firm that it would be hard to overcome them, and that the valley before the walls was terrible, and that the temple which was within that valley was itself encompassed with a very strong wall, insomuch that if the city were taken, that temple would be a second place to refuge for the enemy to retire. This is in Josephus' War of the Wars. A War of the Jews. Hyrcanus II still had supporters in the city who opened the gate, probably in the northwestern part of the city wall. Now, Hyrcanus, these are still the two brothers. Hyrcanus lets the older brother, he lets the Romans in. That allowed Pompey to take hold of Jerusalem's upper city, including the royal palace. And Aristobulus' party held the eastern portion of the city, the Temple Mount in the city of David. The Jews consolidated. Get me out of there. What? Their hold by breaking down the bridge over the Tyrophoon Valley that connected the upper city with the Temple Mount. Pompey offered them the chance to surrender, but their refusal made him begin to persecute the siege with vigor. Pompey had his forces construct a wall circumvallation around the areas that were held by Jews. He then pitched the camp within the wall to the north temple, where stood a saddle allowed access to the temple. So was guarded by the citadel known as the Baris, augmented by a ditch. A second camp was erected southwest of the temple. The troops then set out about fouling the ditch and protected the north part of the temple, enclosed and building two ramparts, one next to Byrus and the other on the west bank. The defenders from their superior position sought to hinder Roman efforts. When the banks were complete, Pompey erected siege towers, brought up siege engines and battering rams from Tyre. Under the protection of slingers driving the defenders from the walls, they began to batter the walls surrounding the temple. After 3 months, Pompey's troops finally managed to overthrow one of the Byrus towers, and were able to enter the temple precinct, both from the citadel and from the west. First over the wall was Fatus Cornelius Sulla, the son of former dictator and senior officer of Pompey's army. He was followed by two centurions, Furius and Fabulus, who each led a cohort, and the Romans soon overcame the defending Jews, 12,000 of whom were slaughtered. However, only a few Roman troops were killed. Pompey himself entered the temple's Holy of Holies, which only the high priest was allowed to enter, and thus desecrated it. He did not remove anything, neither its treasures nor any funds, and the next day he ordered the temple cleansed and its rituals resumed. Pompey then headed back to Rome and took Aristobulus with him for his triumphal processions. The siege and the conquest of Jerusalem was a disaster for the Hasmonean kingdom. Pompey reinstated Hyrcanus II as high priest, but stripped him of his royal title, though Rome recognized him as the Ethnarch in 47 BC. Judea remained autonomous, but was obliged to pay tribute and became dependent on the Roman administration in Syria. The kingdom was dismembered and was forced to relinquish the coastal plain, deriving of its access to the Mediterranean, as well as parts of Idumea and Samaria. Several Hellenistic cities were granted autonomy to form the Decapolis, leaving the state greatly diminished. So we see Pompey coming in. You know, he desecrated the temple, but he reinstated everything and told the temple to be clean and let everything be resumed. But he did because they had to get involved. Now you got to answer to us. Now you got to pay us tribute. And he pretty much, that little civil war between each other, between us, got us, where we lost what independence that we had, and now we, pretty much subject to Rome. In a lot of cases, we lost a lot of our free and a lot of land and a lot of areas, giving back Idumea and these other areas and so forth. And then ultimately they giving that thing over to the Herodians, and they establishing the next king to come in. And that was the end of the Hasmonean dynasty. It ended with us battling each other, man. I got one more slide here, y'all, and we may read that Romans 8. Share this tab instead. And so now we're finna read about the Jewish wars here. All right, it's the last slide. And we just gotta. It ain't that. It seems like a lot, but it ain't that much. It's probably 2 pages in the text. Can you see that up?
Sure.
Okay.
It says ancient Jewish history. The Jews' great revolt against Rome in 66 CE led to one of the greatest catastrophes in Jewish life, and in retrospect might well have been a terrible mistake. No one can argue with the Jews for wanting to throw off Roman rule, since the Romans had first occupied Israel in 63 BCE. Their rule had grown more and more onerous. From almost the beginning of the Common Era, Judea was ruled by Roman procurators, whose chief responsibility was to collect and deliver an annual tax to the empire. Whatever the procurators raised beyond the quota assigned, they could keep. Not surprisingly, they often imposed confiscated, confiscatory taxes, equally infuriating to the Judeans. Rome took over the appointment of the high priest, a turn of events that the ancient Jews appreciated as much as modern Catholics would have appreciated Mussolini appointing the popes. As a result, the high priests who represented the Jews before God on their most sacred occasions increasingly came from the ranks of Jews who collaborated with Rome.
So the leadership, Rome started putting in the high priests. And they started, and so that's why you'll see in the text, when we go back to the text, you see them say, hey man, well, if Christ is out here, if he's out here, if Yahweh's out here and he's doing all these miracles and the people love him and all this stuff, they not gonna need us. They not gonna elect us. They gonna mess around and make him high priest, make him king. And so they didn't want that. But most of those people that were in those rankings, they had allegiance to Rome. That's how you get in. All right, you make Rome happy. All right, you keep the peace down. You don't have to, where Rome ain't got to come in and mess with you and have to get involved. They'll mess around and elect you as a high priest. If you collaborate, go ahead.
At the beginning of the Common Era, a new group arose among the Jews, the Zealots, in Hebrew, Kanaim. These anti-Roman rebels were active for more than 6 decades and later instigated the Great Revolt.
They instigated the Great Revolt, the Zealots. The Zealots, another sect. All right, they ain't want none of that Roman mess. I think Sakari one of those sects. They ain't want none of that mess. I can't really name another set though, to be 100. And maybe we'll do a lesson on the Sakari one day. It'll probably be short though. But they were anti-Roman rebels. They didn't want nothing to do with this mess, man, and did certain things to, like I say, to get people riled up. We're gonna see how they instigated it. Go ahead.
Their most basic belief was that all means were justified to attain political and religious liberty.
We need out. All means. We're not gonna sit here and mope about it. Whatever we can do to obtain liberty and religious freedom, man, we need to do it. All right, it's justified in the Most High's eyes. Go ahead.
The Jews' anti-Roman feelings were seriously exacerbated during the reign of the high-praised Emperor Caligula, who in the year 39 declared himself to be a deity and ordered his statue to be set up at every temple in the Roman Empire. The Jews, alone in the empire, refused the command. They would not defile God's temple for the statue of pagan Rome's newest deity. Caligula threatened to destroy the temple, so a delegation of Jews was sent to pacify him. To no avail, Caligula raged at them. So you are the enemies of the gods, the only people who refuse to recognize my divinity? Only the emperor's sudden violent death saved the Jews from wholesale massacre.
Listen, man, Caligula about to kill him. He about to come through. He about to come through. And he's already saying he crazy and try to kill everybody. But luckily, by the grace of God, he ended up having a sudden death. He ended up dying suddenly from a violent death. Go ahead, Doc.
Caligula's actions radicalized even the more moderate Jews. What assurance did they have, after all, that another Roman ruler would not arise and try to defile the temple or destroy Judaism altogether? In addition, Caligula's sudden demise might have also been interpreted as confirming the Zealots' belief that God would fight alongside the Jews if only they would have the courage to confront Rome.
And we'll spin a sign. You know, like when the Pope died, you had all kind of breakdowns in Israel, man. That was coming out about the the forthcoming of the Lord. You know, all we need is a little sign where we can get these folks liberated. And we can get on up out of it. We can go ahead and fight. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, this thing helped the Zealots because the Zealots was like, yeah, that Joker died. See, as long as we keep killing it and going against, you know what I'm saying, that Roman rule, you know, the Lord gonna fight with us. He just killed the emperor. You know, that's big, man. He just killed the emperor, man. You know, that thing rallied us up. Go ahead.
In the decades after Caligula's death, Jews found their religion subject to periodic gross indignities. Roman soldiers exposing themselves in the temple on one occasion, and burning a Torah scroll on another. Ultimately, the combination of financial exploitation, Rome's unbridled contempt for Judaism, and the unabashed favoritism that the Romans extended to Gentiles living in Israel brought about the revolt. In the year 66, Florus, the last Roman procurator, stole vast quantities of silver from the temple. The outraged Jewish masses rioted and wiped out the small Roman garrison stationed in Jerusalem. Cestius Gallus, the Roman ruler in neighboring Syria, sent in a larger force of soldiers, but the Jewish insurgents routed them as well.
Listen now, this joker that came in the temple and stole the load of silver out the temple with all this other stuff going on. This joker trying to give us put these trying to make himself a deity and put clay statues in. Joker's coming in, desecrating the temple, butt naked, and Dawn burning up Torah scrolls, and then you gonna steal some money. That was it. That was it. That was it. That was the what they say, the straw that broke the camel's back. That was it. And so the masses, all right, everybody riding, all right, and wiped out the Roman garrisons that were stationed in Jerusalem. He destroyed all those garrisons, and then Jokers tried to send some darn troop, and wipe them out too. Go ahead.
Yeah, this was a heartening victory that had a terrible consequence. Many Jews suddenly became convinced that they could defeat Rome, and the zealots' ranks grew geometrically. Never again, however, did the Jews achieve so decisive a victory.
Mm.
When the Romans returned, they had 60,000 heavily armed and highly professional troops. They launched their first attack against the Jewish state's most radicalized area, the Galilee in the north. The Romans vanquished the Galilee, and an estimated 100,000 Jews were killed or sold into slavery.
And see, this is what we was reading. This is what we were reading earlier, where when we was in the Babylon and Timbuktu, when he said there was many black Jews in the slave markets. Our brain goes to 14. We go to the transatlantic slave trade, but you were killed. And I say, man, Jews. I mean, the Romans had their whole society ran off of slavery. Their whole society ran off of it. They had many slaves. Even when you're reading the letter to man, what's that book? That one page. We did a class on it. We just read the whole letter. Well, Paul sent him back to his slave master. It'll come to me. Go ahead though.
Romans 16.
Nah. Well, it's a whole book in the Bible. But it's only one page. It's only one or two pages. That Paul. It's in Paul's epistles. Start with a P. So Philemon. Book of Philemon. But go ahead.
Throughout the Roman conquest of Shalak, is that over yet?
Yeah, kind of.
Throughout, throughout the Roman conquest of this territory, the Jewish leadership in Jerusalem did almost nothing to help their beleaguered brothers. They apparently had concluded, too late, unfortunately, that the revolt could not be won and wanted to hold down Jewish deaths as much as possible.
Okay,
The
hold on one
highly
second. Let me lift this thing up.
uh,
All right, go ahead once you see it lift.
the highly embittered refugees who succeeded in escaping the Galilean massacres fled to the last major Jewish stronghold, Jerusalem. There, they killed anyone in the Jewish leadership who was not as radical as they. Thus, all the more moderate Jewish leaders who headed the Jewish government at the revolts beginning in 66 were dead by 68, and not one died at the hands of a Roman. All were killed by fellow Jews. Wow.
Read it again.
All were killed by fellow Jews.
All were killed by fellow Jews because the Zealots were killing anybody, any leader that tried to say that wasn't as radical as they. The Zealots was like, nah, we finna kill your butt too. You know, any Jewish, any leader that was a little, had a little of that Hellenization in their blood, just felt like they was gonna surrender. The they killed them. All right, from 66 to 68, all were dead, and not one was killed by the hands of a Roman. All were killed by Jews. Again, we in the midst of a war, and we in the midst of a war. Come on, man. We in the midst of a war with Rome, and we in a civil war against against ourselves. Where we not on one accord, man. Joker's like, nah, we need to surrender. Nah, we need to fight to death. God got us. And then if you like that, I'm gonna go ahead and kill you. It's we say that too about Bishop. I mean, about Nat Turner, that Birth of a Nation movie. When you see the end of it, you like, man, he should have killed all them folks. Soon as he said, once they crossed the line and they said, nah, we not going, y'all, whoever with us stand on this line, whoever, I think he did kill him. Did he kill him? Stand on this line. If whoever's on my side, come on this side, and whoever on the
Nah,
other side. He didn't
nah,
kill him?
he didn't kill him. Nope.
Yeah, he should have killed him. That's
Yeah,
what we was thinking at the end of the movie,
especially
man.
that little boy.
Especially
Especially the little boy. Should have took him out.
should have took him out. Yeah. Them Zillots was taking him out though. Them Zillots didn't have that eternal spirit. They were taking him out, man. Go ahead.
The scene was now set for the revolt's final catastrophe. Outside Jerusalem, Roman troops prepared to besiege the city. Inside the city, the Jews were engaged in a suicidal civil war. In later
And
generations,
Shalakia, y'all. Shalakia. I just tore that up with what I just said. It wasn't the Zillots in this particular instance. They are saying these are the highly embittered refugees. Those, because they hit Galilee first. So those embittered by what happened in Galilee, they coming down. They coming down and they're killing the Jewish leaders. They're killing the Jewish leaders for who headed the government at the revolt. They killing them. They're not. It's not the Zealots killing them, but these are folks who watch their families and stuff get murdered, and they was able to escape those massacres and go down to Jerusalem. Um, Anybody who wasn't as radical, I guess they are kind of like Zealots though. Because uh, they still on fire about this thing, and they're probably blaming. Hold on one second, y'all. Shalakia, y'all, Shalakia. Um, where we was at? You know where we was at?
Con.
So did I
It's
clear
good.
that up? Did we got that? Did we got that figured out? Because I know I messed that thing up at first, but just clear that up. That is really, those embittered Jews who just came down from that escaped Galilee, the Galilean massacres. They came down and they started killing. They started killing us. They started killing. Man, can you imagine that? Can you imagine escaping? You'd escape one plantation. Well, you done escaped a plantation. These jokers done came and killed all the slaves. And then you find out where the rest of them at, and then you come back and you kill. Well, I guess I don't know, man. I had one of them Gilead mindsets myself, man. But I know the bitterness because I was mad. I tell y'all every time I was at that Klan rally, and I was mad. Jake didn't show up. I was hot. Jake didn't show up, man. And we was just looking. We was the only ones out there with all them darn Edomites. But yeah, if you can see somebody dying and stuff, I can see that. I can see that happening, even though it's ridiculous. But man, I can see how that's happening, man. Especially in the mount of a civil war. I mean, in a war against some other people. You can't be up there. We can't be up there attacking ourselves. But go ahead, Op.
In later generations, the rabbis hyperbolically declared that the revolt's failure and the temple's destruction was due not to Roman military superiority,
Nah,
but
where
to
you at? It should be at the scene was now set. The
yeah,
second
we read
paragraph.
that.
We read that?
Okay, yeah, and then that's when you stopped and said and made a correction.
Okay, Shalaki.
Okay, the
Give me
scene was
money.
now set for the revolt's final catastrophe outside Jerusalem. Roman troops prepared to besiege the city. Inside the city, the Jews were engaged in a suicidal civil war. In later generations, the rabbis hyperbolically declared that the revolt's failure and the temple's destruction was due not to Roman military superiority, but to causeless hatred among the Jews.
Mm.
While the Romans would have won the war in any case, the Jewish civil war both hastened their victory and immensely increased the casualties. One horrendous example, in expectation of a Roman siege, Jerusalem's Jews had stockpiled a supply of dry food that could have fed the city for many years. But one of the wearying zealot factions burned the entire supply.
Come on now, these zealots done came in. Jokers done stored up enough food where we ain't got to go outside the gates for years. But one of them zealots came in and burned all the food supply up. Go ahead.
Apparently hoping that destroying this security blanket would compel everyone to participate in the revolt. The starvation resulting from this mad act caused suffering as great as any the Romans inflicted. We do know that some great figures of ancient Israel opposed the revolt, most notably Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Since the zealot leaders ordered the execution of anyone advocating surrender to Rome, Rabbi Yochanan arranged for his disciples to smuggle him out of Jerusalem disguised as a corpse. Once safe, he personally surrendered to the Roman general Vespasian, who granted him concessions that allowed Jewish communal life to continue. During the summer of 70, the Romans breached the walls of Jerusalem and initiated an orgy of violence and destruction. Shortly thereafter, they destroyed the Second Temple. This was the final and most devastating Roman blow against Judea.
That's all we want out. All right, that was the final blow. So it can end up coming down. It's gonna start getting into modern times and the Holocaust and all that stuff. But we see here, man, that this thing, this inner fightings, not just at this point, but even from the time that Christ, even before Christ, even with us, with the Hasmonean dynasty, with John Hyrcanus and Aristobulus, them interfighting with each other. them putting in Herod, and jokers don't like Herod. The Pharisees don't like him as a king. The Sadducees like him. This beef between them and the scenes also. Don't they casted they self off and they off in the woods somewhere. Um, just all these different inner workings with us just rivaling and disputing and warring with each other. These events kind of led to Rome ultimately coming in and conquering, just outside of the prophecy that these things were going to happen anyway. But we see the workings of how the Most High put this thing into play. This hatred that we had amongst each other, man. Willing to kill each other. How many times were the disciples in Christ actually, what I'm saying, threatened, they life threatened? How many times you see in the text that he killed the prophets and killed, all our leadership? Um, so we understand that there's gonna be they hate those that rebuke at the gate. We understand that these people are gonna be stiff necked and they gonna make their face hard. So um this was just like I say, this ain't even really deep. This some light little wiki stuff, man, and a couple other little websites, but this ain't a deep look, but it's just a brief look into what led up to that thing. Because I know a lot of times we just Christ, the death of Christ, Paul's epistles, and then 70 AD, the temple was destroyed, but we don't really have no understanding of what got us to that point and what was happening, especially with like Caligula and him doing that, and our disputes even leaking into Rome, where they expelling us out of those territories. But I yield with that, man. If there's any questions or anything, y'all can definitely you can definitely hit the link, or you can if you have anything even to add, what I'm saying, feel free. Flow is open.
Hey, Shalakia.
Good,
Um,
huh?
you said that you see how much hatred they had towards each other, man. Ain't nothing changed, brother. ain't no, ain't no, ain't no new things under the sun, man. That hatred still is live today, and sometimes we read especially the New Testament in the wrong, in the wrong tone. We don't keep things in cultural context. You know what I mean? We was going over that the Romans 11. Um, we don't keep it in cultural context the things that Paul was facing at the time the epistle was being written. And so, since we take it out of cultural context and make everything in modern day terms, we kind of lose the zest of the text itself. What was the intent of the text. So yeah, so you see that through all those, not just the Northern Kingdom. When you get into First Kings 12, we wanted to go up there and fight the Northern Kingdom, but we was fighting amongst the Jews. Southern Kingdom was fighting among Southern Kingdom, killing Southern Kingdom, and so this is
Excellent
the
point.
you see what I'm saying? And so this is a major issue. And that's prophecies, man. That the man is tender among you, his eye gonna be evil towards his brother, man. That's the curse that the Most High put upon Israel to happen, man. And so when we see things today, I know a lot of us when we first came into this truth, we thought everything um was gonna be green pastures, man. you know, just to come into it and see that the grass is so brown, man, and there's a lot of watering got to be done with inside the walls of Israel, not on the outside of the walls of Israel. So man, great point, man, great lesson, man. All praises to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh.
All praise to Yahbashim Ashka. And the only time you see somebody, the only major event where I seen jokers dying and jokers shot at, it's been Israel in Israel, man. It's been Israel on Israel. It's been Israel on Israel. Like you said, man, this thing ain't changed, man. This thing ain't changed. And we gotta do better with that. We gotta do better. Um we gotta do better with this thing, better with our research, better with just loving each other, man. And getting rid of that bitterness. You know what I'm saying? Because jokers leave certain organizations with that same bitterness that them zealots when they left Galilee and seeing their people get murdered and they escaped that. They have that same bitterness coming down to come into the stronghold, to come into another organization, or to come against another organization and try to destroy their leadership, and try to attack them, because they're harboring that same bitterness. But man, we just got to do better, man. We got to do better. We got a lot of growing to do. Anything else, bro? Dion, you got anything?
Nah, man, share some decent light on different aspects of what was going on. Excellent lesson, though, brother.
All praise to the Most High, man. Throughout. Well, we'll end with that, y'all. Again, man, if y'all got any questions or you look at this, this was brief. You can go look. It's some more stuff out there, some more meat. Definitely on that. Just go and check that stuff out, man, and see. Like I said, we just got holes. We got a lot of holes that we still gotta fill in. Like we reading that Babylon Timbuktu. If we gonna say that's a credible source, um, we got to start following and seeing what some of that stuff was leading us to, and some of the, because before I read that, I thought that, man, we went straight into slavery. We went into the dawn. We went into West Africa and started doing what they do and start warring with them, and they took us and sold us to the Edomites, and then the Edomites took us. Man, but it's a whole gap, man. We talking about a century. Is that a century? No, a millennia.
Millennium, Shalakia. And
Yeah.
I was looking for the information too, man. That book, where, because initially we didn't go into West Africa. Initially we went to North Africa, and we migrated down. You know what I mean? We migrated down to West Africa.
Con.
Yeah. So I got to get the information, man. So yeah, I know it tell us we were in North Africa, but yeah, but eventually we migrated down to West Africa. We didn't go straight to West Africa.
Con. And that's it. We just need to expand the conversation. We just can't take it straight to West Africa. That's what I used to do. But yeah, that's what he was saying in the book. He was saying North Africa and Libya, and even saying that these black Jews are in Asia and other places, man, all over the place. Before the scattering, he in there saying that almost in every habitable place you see these Jews. But yeah, man, we just gotta do better, man. So I pray this thing was edifying, man. Y'all be blessed. I have a great night. We'll be back on Bring It Out TV on YouTube. Y'all willing Friday. So y'all at 7 o'clock or 7:30?
7:30.
7:30. Y'all be blessed, man. Shalom. Y'all make sure y'all like that video on y'all way out the water. Y'all can do that for the camp, man. Hit that like video. Shalom.